Gather round and welcome back to another edition of Todd Talks College Football. That's right, folks. Here we are heading into week 2 of the 2025 season, and we got the week 2 college football PREDICTOR show. That's right. Who is going to win this weekend in the biggest games in college football? Well, I'm going to try to tell you better than I did last week. Last week I was 2-4. On straight up picks. That's right, I only hit Georgia Tech and Ohio State, Florida State, LSU, Miami. All those games came and went the wrong way for me. But I did go 3-3 in the over-unders, and I did 2-4 in the semi against the spread. I don't know that I overly picked it against the spread on all the games, but we'll call it 2-4. We're going to get a lot better this week. I can promise you that. And we are going to start with the 2025 edition of the Iowa State game. That's right, folks. This is the big noon Saturday game. Iowa traveling to Iowa State. In case you didn't know, the road team in this game hasn't lost since 2018. That's right. That is quite a while for the road team to continue to win this game. And I'm wondering if we're going to see a very similar outcome this year in the annual rivalry between these two schools. All right. So we know the home team hasn't won in this series since 2018, and they did not play this game in 2020 because of the COVID situation. So how did Iowa look last week? Well, Mark Gronowski, their quarterback, did not have a very good game there for Iowa. I think he was 8 of 15 for 44 yards and a touchdown against Albany. But Iowa's running game rushed for more than 300 yards. So I think we're going to see a little bit better output on the passing side this week for Iowa. I really hope so, because they're not going to be able to beat Iowa State with 44 yards passing. Iowa State, Rocco last week, what did he do? 19 for 20, pretty damn consistent there. 278, 3 touchdowns, and he played against a pretty good South Dakota team last week. So we got Iowa State minus 2.5. Now, I'm going off of FanDuel, but you can get -3 over on DraftKings. And we got an over-under at 41.5. So we got Iowa State minus 2.5, over-under 41.5. This game is normally played on the under most of the time in this series. Last year it was a 1-point game, 20-19. I'm going to go with this game at Iowa 23, Iowa State 20, and the road team continues to win this series. So I like Iowa plus the 2.5, and I like this game to go just over the 41.5 to about 43, 44 points. So just over the 41.5. I'm going to say Iowa and the 2.5 here. They're going to get a big victory on the road at Iowa State. All right, let's move over to another noon game that we have the Illinois Fighting Illini traveling down to the Duke Blue Devils. This is quite the interesting matchup here. Illinois is ranked at 11 in the polls this week, and Duke is coming in unranked. So we got a transfer quarterback from Tulane at Duke. I'm probably going to butcher his name, Darian Messina. He's down there at Duke, had a great season at Tulane last year. We'll see exactly how good he can do against this Illinois defense. We got Luke Altmaier, the Illinois quarterback, was pretty productive last week in a win against a scrub team, I think Central, Southern, Western, some kind of Illinois team that they were playing. He went 17-21 for 217 yards and 3 touchdowns. I've got, I think at the end of the day here, the rushing attack for Illinois is probably going to be too much for Duke to keep up in this game. We're going into the game with Duke plus 2.5 at home. That is, again, on FanDuel. You can get +3 for Duke on DraftKings. We got an over-under at 49.5 here on this game. I'm seeing this game coming down to Illinois if they're playing the way that they anticipate themselves to play this year in Brett Bielema. He anticipates he's going to build off of last season's record this year. We'll see if he can or can't. But I'm going to go here at Illinois 27, Duke 20 in a hard-fought game. So still Illinois given the 2.5. I'm going to go ahead with that. Even the +3, I'd go ahead and give that up. I'm going to bring this game under to 49.5. Over-under for this at 47 and a 27-20 win for the Illinois Fighting Illini. Let's move down to Texas for quite the battle between the Baylor Bears and the SMU Mustangs. This is going to be quite the show between SMU quarterback, returning starter Kevin Jennings, and obviously Baylor and the Sawyer Robertson band coming in to SMU to try to get a big victory. Remember, Baylor, who I had picked last week to beat Auburn, couldn't get the running game going, couldn't stop Auburn's run, and they just could not win that football game. They got a better chance of stopping SMU's run this week. SMU doesn't have the powerful running game that Auburn showed last week. I got this game really going to be a quarterback duel. I mean, it really comes down to that. I don't know that either defense is going to be able to make much progress in stopping the other's offense. I think it's going to be the quarterback that has the better game. I have been back and forth on this game. I got SMU -2.5 at home, 65.5 here on the over-under for this matchup. I feel like this is a 2-point game, real close game, 2 to 3 points. I really want to say SMU is going to win this game at home. I'm going to switch my prediction, what I thought a couple minutes ago. I'm going to say Baylor wins this game 38-35 over SMU, and I think that's going to give you 2.5 points. Take Baylor in the 2.5. And take the over, too, at 65.5. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think either one of these defenses is going to be able to really slow down the other one's offense. Now that they both have a game under their belt from last week, I really do think this will be a shootout. Let's move over to Missouri, where we have the Kansas Jayhawks rolling into Missouri to play the Missouri Tigers in quite a nice little matchup here in the Great Plains of America. We got Beau Perbola, the PSU transfer. That's right, the Penn State transfer from last year. Couldn't beat out Drew Aller. Ended up rolling into Missouri. He's got the headband and all, so this should be a fun game. He's an exciting little quarterback, and I think Missouri's a good spot for him. We got Jalen Daniels coming back from Kansas after the injury last year. 2 games under his belt this year. He's looked pretty good. Speedy. He's got all his moves back, his jukes back. He's ready to rock and roll. The question is, can he do that against the Missouri Tiger defense? And that's where it's going to really be interesting to see if Kansas can show the speed that they've shown in the last game, especially against Fresno State in the opener. If they can show that speed against an SEC team and exactly where, how good this Missouri defense is going to be, and is Kansas' speed really as fast as we think it is when they get on the field against, I would say, clearly better competition than Fresno State, and I would say a step up in competition for Kansas in this game against Missouri. All right, we've got Missouri at -6.5, and we got an over-under at 50.5 here. I really like Kansas. I think they got a really good opportunity to win the Big 12 this year, the way they played their first couple games, but I'm not really sure they're ready to go on the road and beat Missouri at home. So I'm going to give this game Missouri 34, Kansas 31, So I'm going to take Kansas and the 6.5 points. If you can find it for 7, that would be even better. But I'm going to take Kansas and 6.5, and I'm going to put this game over the 50.5 mark at 55 points on my prediction. So I'm going to go 6.5 in Kansas and the over here against the Missouri Tigers, but I do think Missouri will win. Let's move up to the Glass Bowl in Toledo, and we've got a real powerhouse game going on this weekend, folks. If you haven't been paying attention, we got Western Kentucky traveling to Toledo. Now, Toledo's coming off a loss against Kentucky last week, which I actually predicted that Toledo would win that game. They did keep it close in the first half. It was a 10-2 game. All the way through to the fourth quarter, both teams scored 14 to end it up with a Kentucky win at 24-16. I think Toledo is going to get back on the winning track this week. I think, they've got Tucker Gleason coming back as their quarterback. I think they're going to get their offense moving a little better than it was last week. But what we do know is that Maverick McIver, that's right, one of my favorite names in college football, the quarterback for the Western Kentucky University Hilltoppers, is going to throw the ball. And there's no question about what the Hilltoppers' offensive game plan is against Toledo. Can they throw the ball down the field and make the connections that they've shown against Sam Houston State and someone else last week? I can't remember who they played, but they had big games in both of those games. Maverick McIver is quite the thrower down the field. So this will be quite the game. I honestly do think this game could come down to a chance the winner of this game sets themselves up in a position to make a really strong run at being one of the group of 5, the Little Six contender here for the playoff. So we'll see how this works out. Now, we got Toledo given 6.5 in this game on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's up to -7. 58.5 on both books on the over-under here. So last year, Western Kentucky pulled out a close one at like 26-20 here over Toledo down there in Hilltopper country. But this year, it's in the Glass Bowl, so it'll be a little bit of an advantage for Toledo. Do I think it's a 7-point advantage or 6.5-point advantage? I'm not really sure here. I think we're looking at a game that's going to come into the Toledo 31, Western Kentucky 28 type of score. So based off that metric, I got this as a Western Kentucky and take the points at 6.5 if you can get the 7 on DraftKings or whoever it was. Yeah, DraftKings. They were giving you 7 on this if you're a Western Kentucky fan. So I like Western Kentucky in the points. I do like Toledo to win the game, and I'm going to go over the 58.5 here on this matchup here between the two high-powered explosive offenses. So I'm going to take the over in Western Kentucky in the points with a Toledo straight-up victory. Let's move down to Norman, Oklahoma for the only ranked matchup of the weekend, and that would be the Michigan Wolverines traveling to Oklahoma to play the Sooners. Boomers Sooners are going to be out in full force on a Saturday night. It's going to be exciting there. They got John Mateer, transfer from Washington State, big-time quarterback, but he's going to be playing the biggest, toughest defense that he's seen in his career up to this point. So we're going to see how he does there. And then obviously we've got the freshman phenom himself. That's right, I'm using his terms. The best player, best freshman you've ever seen. You ain't seen something like me before. Bryce Underwood. That's right, folks. Bryce had a pretty decent game, I think, to start out his collegiate career with his first start against New Mexico. Some people will say Michigan struggled. I thought that, considering what they were starting with a true freshman, I thought they played pretty well. I don't think they struggled in that game. The game, I watched it. It looked like they had control of the game. And, yeah, New Mexico cut it to 17 or whatever. But I thought Bryce Underwood played very well for an 18-year-old getting his first start against competition that is definitely not going to be the caliber of where he's going to in Norman this week. So what do we got here really is John Mateer and Bryce Underwood have never seen defenses like they're going to see on Saturday night. Oklahoma's defense is terrific. Michigan's defense is just terrific too. So you got two great defenses going against two quarterbacks that are going to need to make adjustments on the speed of the game and the schemes that they're going to be seeing in front of them, and how are they going to be able to process that, and are they going to be able to make plays based off of what they're seeing against those defenses. So I think obviously the advantage goes to John Mateer. He has more experience playing college football than Bryce Underwood has. I think this is going to be potentially a very low-scoring game, similar to the manner maybe Clemson and LSU, Ohio State, Texas last week. Both teams have got a game under their belt last week, so it probably won't take as long for these teams to get going this week, scoring-wise. I still think it's going to be a low-scoring game, a defensive struggle. Both defenses are going to be throwing stuff up in front of these quarterbacks they just haven't seen before, and how are they going to process it? We got Oklahoma giving 5.5. I actually seen this go up to 6 in some places, but we're going to say 5.5 here. We got an over-under at 45.5 on this game. I really think this is going to boil down to Oklahoma's not going to make the critical mistake, and I think Michigan will at some point in the game. That's going to turn this game on its head a little bit. I think Oklahoma is going to win this game 23-17. That's right in that 5.5 window. If you give the points, you could win. If you take Michigan into points, you could win. If it's 23-19, who knows exactly. I'm going to stay away from the points here. I'm going to go with Oklahoma in the money line and an under 45.5 over-under here. So I'm going to go under 45.5 and Oklahoma with the win. I'm going to stay off the points here, although I do think Oklahoma will win by 6. I could see this being a 4-point game too. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, so the bigger the spread, the harder it is to cover if you have a low-scoring game. But I'm going to go Oklahoma 23, Michigan 17, and the biggest matchup of the weekend. Let's look at my locks of the week. That's right. I'm going to give you 3 selections that I think are locks here, and we're going to start with the BYU Cougars giving 18.5 to the Stanford Cardinal up there in BYU country. And I've watched Stanford play this year, and I watched Hawaii now play twice. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think Hawaii's any good, and I surely don't think Stanford's any good at all. And although I did not watch BYU win 69-0, I know through 30 years of watching college football exactly, or more than that, honestly, of exactly what BYU is going to look like when they come out, and they're going to be too good for the Stanford Cardinal. And I'm going to go ahead and give the 18.5 and take the BYU Cougars to win this game and cover the spread. Let's move down to Athens, Ohio. That's right, we have 2 games in Ohio that I'm looking at this week. One was Toledo. Now we're going to move to Athens, Ohio, and Rich Rod bringing his West Virginia Mountaineers down to Athens to play in an interesting game on the road for West Virginia. Now we saw Ohio Bobcats take Rutgers to the brink last week, and I thought that was a pretty good game for the Bobcats. And we saw West Virginia get their groove on against whoever they were playing. I don't remember the name of the team, but it was a pretty good whooping for the West Virginia Mountaineers. We got an over-under at 60.5 on this game, and that's what I'm looking at. I think this game is going to be a high-scoring affair. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these teams touched 40, if maybe both of them did. So I'm going to take the West Virginia-Ohio game at over 60.5 here on my second lock of the week. Third lock of the week, I'm going to go back to a game we've already spoke about earlier in the show, and that is the Illinois Fighting Illini on the road at Duke. I'm going to go ahead and give Duke the 2.5 points and take the Illini on the road to win this game and cover the spread. So that is going to be my third lock of the week. Illinois minus 2.5 at Duke. For those of you who do not know, my son plays small college Division III football at Wilmington College, and they start their season. That's right, the D3ers get on the board this week and get their game started. And they have the Wooster Fighting Scots rolling in to play the Wilmington Quakers this weekend. So we're going to look at this game for just a minute, and I don't know that I'm going to give a score, but I'm going to give you a little insight on the game. So we've got Kevin Burke rolling in as his second year at Wilmington College, and he brings back a starting quarterback in Isaac Ross, who started 7 games in 2024. He threw for 1,328 yards and 3 touchdowns, was about a 50% completion rate in those 7 games that he played. They did play Wooster last year, which Wilmington did lose that game. But he did have 400 yards throwing in that ball game, so he had a heck of a game passing the football. Wilmington also returns basically their whole offensive line, and they return 7 starters on defense. So they're looking for a big improvement coming back in 2025 off the 2024 campaign in Kevin Burke's second year. Now, for Wooster, we have a new head coach in Austin Holter. This will be his first game there at Wooster College. And he doesn't have a lot of history as a head coach, but he's coming in here to take this team. He's a graduate of Wooster. Now, Wooster did lose their entire starting offensive line from last year. Every one of them graduated, and it was the most experienced offensive line in D3 last year. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge when you had to replace all 5 guys at the positions. They do have a quarterback coming back, Michael Boyle. He had 4 starts last year, had some appearances in other games. He was 965-yard passing and 10 TDs in those games and those 4 starts. Wooster does return their top 4 tacklers on defense, so that's a good thing defensively for Wooster. But they only have 1 player on offense coming back that had more than half the starts last year. So they're really inexperienced offensively, and 4 solid tacklers coming back defensively. And no one really knows what Austin Holter is going to bring to this Wooster offense. So it'll be a real challenge for the Wilmington defense, and they need to pick up what they're trying to do pretty quick. So this is a grudge match, folks. We have a series history here of 2 wins and 2 losses for both teams. So this will be the 5th showing of the Wooster-Wilmington matchup, and whoever wins this game is obviously going to have the bragging rights on the series at 3 wins to 2 losses. So be quite the game. 6 o'clock Saturday night, the Wooster Fighting Scots against the Wilmington Quakers. I'll be there, and I'm going to be hoping for a Wilmington Quaker victory. All right, well, there's our weekly predictor show for week 2. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, this is all for entertainment purposes only. Don't go spend your ducats in a spot against college football, which you just can't know. No one knows what's going to happen in these games. I mean, you do in some of them, like we know Ohio State's going to beat Grambling, but you can't get a money line on that game, so go ahead and keep the money in your pocket. Let's get out there and have a great second week of the season. Hopefully we'll see some exciting action, maybe an upset or 2. These are the kind of weeks that you don't think are great going in, but when they end up, you say, wow, that was quite the week. So week 2 is about to be upon us. Hope you have a great weekend. Go whatever team you're rooting for. And obviously, gather around in ALTT. See you soon.